Ever since its first season launched on the Paramount network back in June of 2018, it didn't take long for Yellowstone to work its way into our collective hearts. And with an incredible ensemble of cast members accompanied by some of the biggest twists and turns in the history of television, Season 4 of the show is highly anticipated. But you might be surprised to hear just how many moments in the franchise were completely unplanned. So what are the best unplanned moments throughout the runtime of the show? And what was it about them that made audiences cover their mouths in shock? Well, whether you're a fan of the Dutton family or just want to know more about the behind-the-scenes workings of the franchise, stay right where you are, as we're about to explore and rank some of the greatest unplanned moments of the history of Yellowstone. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a crazy ride as things are about to get exciting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. Showing up with a bang. First up is by far one of the greatest unplanned moments in the history of television, which featured Cole Hauser stepping in to make a pretty big play at the end of the day. For those of you who don't know, Hauser is the man behind the fan-favorite character Rip Wheeler, who is someone that the cattle ranchers of Yellowstone have always been able to rely on. So after they get into one heck of a fight with some trespassing bikers, Rip decides to pull up in the only way he knows how. According to the script that was on hand that day, Hauser was supposed to witness the initiation of the fight, causing him to slam his vehicle to a halt before jumping out and joining the ranch hands in taking out the competition. But after reading his cues, he approached the showrunners, stating that he believed Rip would prefer to make a better entrance. Someone as brash as Rip would want all eyes to be on him as soon as he enters the frame after all. He also asked Taylor Sheridan, who was busy producing on that day, whether the destruction of the Harley-Davidson bikes on the scene was completely out of the question. Trusting Hauser fully, Sheridan gave him the go-ahead to change the scene and shock everyone who had clearly practiced what had already been written. To the surprise of the biker extras, as well as the ranch hands currently engaged in some well-tempered fisticuffs, Hauser skidded his black truck to a halt by crashing headfirst into the Harleys that were parked on the side of the road. This take was obviously used due to the insanity of the stunt, which means that the shock on the faces of the biker gang was 100% real. Believing that Hauser had somehow forgotten to brake in time, resulting in a massive crash, the cast stayed professional and directed their attention towards the man who had just wiped their bikes off the face of the earth. And props had to be given to the stunt extra who portrayed the role of the lead biker. Without skipping a beat, he pointed himself in Hauser's direction and swore that he was going to pay for what he had done. It's a moment full of raw energy and brilliant commitment from everyone on the scene, and the accident gave a much better reflection of who Rip is as a character. The public has fallen in love with his brash attitude, and we're lucky that Hauser was able to use his acting prowess to drive this point home with the unplanned stunt. The actual biker brawl. As we're well aware by now, Sheridan has given the cast a certain amount of freedom when it comes to the script of the franchise. Rather than dictate what dialogue must be used when, he prefers to leave this in the hands of the cast members, who have been known to use this freedom to bring their characters to life. As it turns out, Hauser isn't the only member of the cast who likes to deviate from the script in an effort to elicit some raw emotion from his fellow cast members. Denham Richards, who is best known for her portrayal of Colby in the Yellowstone universe, is another great example of a cast member who loves to take things into her own hands. This is especially true when it comes to those humorous moments that have caused fans to fall head over heels in love with this character over the past few years. Because as serious as Yellowstone can be, it's these small moments of lightheartedness that make the characters so relatable at the end of the day. Keeping this in mind, you probably won't be surprised to discover that one of the most humorous moments in the history of the franchise is also considered to be an off-the-cuff deviation from the script. But to truly appreciate the moment, let's rewind back to just before Hauser crashed into those Harleys. In this scene, we see the Dutton's livestock enforcement officers walk over to the trespassing biker gang who appear to be resting on the private property that is Yellowstone. And while the bikers clearly believe that they weren't doing anything wrong in the first place, it doesn't take long for things to get out of hand, with the enforcement officers demanding that the bikers move on over to the public land where they are allowed to camp out on. This all went according to script until one of the extras forgot her lines and ended up jumping in by referring to the one enforcement officer as a pink-haired hick. Once again, this means that the surprise of the livestock enforcement officer is actually 100% real. This resulted in another line that was off script, being the "what did you say to me?" that eventually kicked off the high-intensity battle. The stunt extras and cast members took this cue brilliantly and committed to their fight choreography a bit sooner than it was actually expected to happen. What we were left with was a fighting scene that was chock full of raw emotion, making every punch landed better than the last. As we mentioned earlier, this also made the smashing of the Harleys by Hauser a deserved action, right in the feels. Our next moment then comes from the mind of Kevin Costner, whom fans of the franchise have come to love in the form of the Honorable John Dutton, the so-called patriarch of the Dutton family ranch. Yellowstone has presented Costner with some opportunities to wow the fan base with real emotion and drama, but we didn't expect anything to be as perfect as the next moment on our list. We are referring to that infamous scene where John's daughter, Beth, confided in him that she was no longer able to have children due to her actions in the seasons before the last. For those of you who don't remember, Beth discovered that she wasn't able to make Rip a father due to something she had asked her brother Jamie to help her with a while back. You see, after discovering that she was pregnant when she was just a teenager, Beth made the decision to abort her pregnancy, which Jamie helped her with by performing a makeshift abortion on her. It's a moment that made fans question whether Jamie was indeed doing this for the interests of the child or whether his actions were a show of dominance over Beth. So when Beth finally confides in her father, telling him precisely why she is unable to become pregnant, Costner goes off. According to the script, John Dutton was supposed to break down alongside Beth after being overcome with sadness. Costner had other plans though, and decided to not just change the dialogue of the scene, but its overall tone as well. Rather than going with sadness, he chose anger, looking up at Jamie with disgust and saying, "Who do you think you were to take that from her?" The raw emotion and dynamic eye movements of Costner absolutely sold this moment, making it seem as if John truly hates Jamie for what he helped Beth with all those years ago. As it turns out, Costner was actually speaking from the heart in this moment, pulling from his previous life experiences. Kevin Costner had actually gone through a personal experience like this of his own. While he didn't speak up on exactly what it was that he experienced, there's no doubt that this is where his anger and disappointment ended up coming from. Just like that, an unscripted moment became one of the most emotionally taxing moments in the history of the third season of the show. That subtle embarrassment from Beth. Speaking of Beth, who is portrayed by the beautiful Kelly Riley, she is most certainly a fan favorite amongst the audience of Yellowstone. In fact, some would say that the relationship between her and Rip is the sole reason for them tuning in every week. The two characters have been through more than a few things in the past 3 seasons of the franchise, but it looks like regardless of what they end up experiencing, they always find their way back to one another. This brings us to the final moment on our list, which is one of the sweetest moments in the runtime of the series. After telling Beth that he really loved it when she called him baby in Going Back to Cali, he asked what he should start calling her to get the same reaction. According to the script, she was supposed to respond with, "Anything you want, baby," but Riley had other plans. Without skipping a beat, she looked into Hauser's eyes and responded with a single word, "wife." Without fully realizing how out of character this was for Beth, Riley then became incredibly flustered, which is precisely how Beth would have reacted to the Freudian slip. This unplanned moment finally showed us that Beth can indeed let her walls down, making for an incredible relationship between her and Rip. What do you think of these unplanned Yellowstone moments? Be sure to let us know in the comment section down below.